fervent pace, and because of the telecommunication, they're able to exchange information a lot faster and achieve goals that were previously thought, unthinkable, like creating a vaccine or multiple iterations of the vaccine to deal with COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2. And that's pretty special, I think, and it's to be celebrated. So, there's an old saying that says, through trying times comes ingenuity, or, pick your adage that, out of adversity comes new creation and whatnot. I think that's to be elevated, and I think we need to do a better job of saying, hey, good job, scientists. Like, you've done a really remarkable series of work and effort to help humanity. I don't know that we would have been forced to do that had we not faced this pandemic. So along those lines too is an increased interest in self-care. People have been interested in self-care and whatnot, and so on and so forth for quite some time. But now that we're stuck at home and we don't want to go interact with people, without masks and, breathe germs on each other like we used to, thinking that, our bodies will just, maybe we'll get sick, from the Christmas party or whatever and come home. Now we've got this looming threat of some disease that's a little more sinister and a little more serious than maybe we ever took credit. And so what we've done is we've actually helped people to understand that the idea of self-care really matters. And that to me is twofold. So it bifurcates into take care of your physiological health by wearing a mask, staying separate from people, honoring that not everybody's where you are, and maybe they're caring for at-risk populations in their homes, or maybe they intermingle with them. But also the mental self-care that comes along with job loss and separation and all the distress and anxiety that is associated with that, such that we take more time to slow down, meditate, pray, engage with spiritual exploration, read more, really good literature out there that we never wanted to cover, never had a reason to, and now we are, because we're sort of in this this ambivalent, nebulous world where nothing is certain anymore. And so what do? We press in and we start reading what some of the ancient authors had written long ago about, remarkably, what is affecting us right now. So concepts like being at peace, non-attachment, pragmatism, stoicism are now coming to the forefront. And I think it's wise that we revisit these concepts like liberty and humanity and respecting where people are. That is all, in my estimation, under the umbrella of self-care. And I think that's something that 2020 has brought us. It's brought us the ability to sit down and really examine where we are, who we are, where we're going, and what we want to do with life. And I think that's really special. I've talked and posted at length about my fears about suicidal ideation, anxiety, depression, child abuse, domestic violence, and so forth. The flip side of that coin is it's now also invited other people in to take a look at those are also pandemics, and really examine them in great detail, such that we become almost curious about new strategies. So if it hasn't been working before, what can we do differently now that it's, the magnifying glass is on us and things have become augmented? And I think that's really, really cool. What it's forced to is partnerships and different campaigns and collaboration. So yeah, we may have gotten some money from the federal government, at least in the United States. And if you're listening to this overseas, maybe your government has done the same, maybe it hasn't. But the point is, we've now got an actual commitment to healthcare. I hope that it's sustainable. I really do. I hope that it's sustainable, and I know that hope is not a strategy. So my invitation through this soliloquy, this sermon, if you will, is that if you find yourself motivated to sustain this kind of effort, that you really activate to go talk to your legislative representatives and ask them to make an affirmative commitment to healthcare, and not just print some money and cut some checks and pretend that the problem is going to go away, but actually really, really commit some resources, maybe not just money, but through some other incentives like student loan forgiveness would be a great opportunity. Right now, the hurdles for student loan forgiveness, if you're serving in the healthcare community, are pretty substantial. You have to meet certain criteria, and you have to serve various demographics and whatnot. But I think that our need has now outstripped those certain criteria, those certain parameters, that we can't just pretend that we're going to forgive student loans and that's going to entice people to go serve 200 miles away from wherever you live or work. It's in urban areas too. And let's face it, like as a nation, we're facing a provider shortage. And certainly in Nevada, where I'm recording from, this is we're in the dead last, 51st per Mental Health America's survey, 51st for many years running. And that's, of course, there's 50 states in the union. There's the District of Columbia. So if you factor that in, we're dead last. And if Nevada can pull itself together and maybe make a recommitment to healthcare, we're going to have something really cool spawn out of this apparently otherwise abysmal 2020. And I don't know that it's that abysmal. It's taught us about resilience too. Resilience, the ability to bounce back. I've done a couple of videos on resilience now about how we learn to tolerate distress, and then we learn to get through the distress because it's temporary. And then the cool thing about that is on the other side of the distress tolerance, we get to bounce back. Of course, we'll be well and we'll learn from that and so forth. But we get to teach other people too. So all the people who are observing us through this time, if we ourselves can be resilient, then we also learn to teach others how to be resilient. And I think that's kind of a lost art for a lot of people who are 3 or 4 generations removed from the great global wars, even the Cold War, which ostensibly ended in the late 80s and early 90s between the so-called West and the East. I don't know that anybody who's under the age of about 40 really appreciates what that is, or really even under the age of 50. And I think what that's done is it's allowed us to find a new way of being resilient. We learn to lean in on our communities. We grab each other and pull together, with masks and with appropriate physical distancing, of course. But it also allows us to maybe tap some resources that we previously took for granted, and maybe look to our elders a little bit too, and say, hey, what did you learn, Grandma and Grandpa, or Mom and Dad, from the times that you had to endure distress? One of the things that I've opined on lately is the idea that we've lost our distress tolerance with instant gratification with our mobile devices and our tablets and whatnot. The ability to just look up information at less than a second's time passing. We can just type something in. We no longer have to go to the card catalog and look it up in the library. There's no more encyclopedias. We just have the Google machine, right? And so what happens when an entire generation, or 3 generations even, has become so accustomed to getting things delivered instantly that we lost the ability to be patient? Maybe this pandemic is allowing us the opportunity to sit on our asses and be patient and just wait. There's no magic bean that's going to fix this, and I've talked about that in different avenues as well. So maybe 2020 hasn't been so bad. Maybe 2020 has forced us to be more innovative as well in the way that we bring things like concerts and events to people. Sure, we've got empty stadiums, but sports are still being played, and we get to cheer for our teams. And education is now finding itself in this new realm whereby we don't get the captive audience in front of us in the classroom anymore, but we get a captive audience online. And that maybe has compelled some people, professors, teachers, and so forth, to get really creative about how they deliver their content. And if you're not delivering content that captures the imagination and brings people in, you got to get better at it if you want to keep your job. You got to get better at it if you just want to deliver what's in your head. And the old lecture format doesn't work. You got to get creative with new media and alternative media and different ways to reach people. So I'm actually inspired. I think that this is, for all the woes that we lament and for all the death and destruction that are put into the headlines and so forth, I think it's really compelled a lot of folks to take stock of what they have in life and really be appreciative of it. And if you haven't yet, here's your chance. Like, instead of taking your disappointment and channeling it into angry, vitriolic posts online and maybe drawing political lines around people in different encampments, maybe don't do that. Maybe humble yourself. If you don't have the answer, be humble and receive new information. And if you do really, truly have the answer, maybe humble yourself and present it in a different way that's not going to be off-putting to your intended audience. So irrespective of what you have to offer or what your position may be, I think humility needs to resurface too. And maybe that's another opportunity that 2020 has brought us. So, we've had record-setting fires, and we've had civil unrest, and we've got riots in cities, and peaceful protests turned into riots and hijacked by movements that don't have the best interests in mind, and we've got all sorts of disease and people dying, and of course it's being pumped into our psyches through headlines and different avenues that want to advertise and generate money and all that. Maybe this is an opportunity for us to say, you know what? I don't need the information overload. Maybe I don't need to drink out of a fire hose all the time. Maybe we need to return to peace and tranquility that we really haven't ever embraced for the last couple of generations, because we've been so interested in pursuing quarter four outperforming quarter three and sacrificing our families so that we can go to the office and get business done. And maybe just pause, take a time out and pull back, be present with each other. I think there's a lot of opportunity here. There was a great attempt, and it was so well received that it got bought out. I guess some good news, I think was one of the great things to come out of this, because it makes us, pivot our attention away from all the death and destruction and start paying attention to the way that people are bouncing back and the way that communities support each other. And yeah, sure, there's graffiti all over the place after a riot, and then what doesn't get covered very often is the resurgence afterward that, several citizens go out and scrub off the graffiti and clean up the wreckage. And so maybe if we don't engage in that, maybe if we are aware of the contemptuous nature that living in this world tugs us into, we can resist that and start to re-engage in helping each other. I think that's a real positive. I think it really, really brings folks together if you allow yourself to do it. And I'm not saying that everybody's allowing themselves to do it, for sure. There's still people who want to stake their claim and carve out their own turf and say, beyond this line you shall not cross, and if you cross it, then I will shun you, or whatever. But maybe that doesn't need to rule the day. Maybe what needs to rule the day is the idea that we refocus our thinking brain on stuff that's positive, and then we'll feel a lot better. And please don't interpret this as my invitation to pretend that bad things don't happen. Bad things are happening all over the place. It's one of our natural, innate responses to environment. It comes from our limbic system, which is in the middle/rear part of our brain. The limbic system is comprised of 10 essential emotions. I talk a lot about this, one of which is disgust. And it's okay to have disgust against things like racism and totalitarian governments, things that are simply unhealthy for humanity. We should fight those things. excuse me, we should fight against overreaching governmental representation. We should fight against fascism. We should